Hello, 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 and welcome back to part 2 of Driven by Design. Today we are talking about the super talented and recently passed Jerry Hirshberg, founder of Nissan Design International. If you were listening to part 1, you'll know we have two guests today, Anka Bodak and Brenda Parkin, both of whom which I worked with at Nissan for many years, and we're telling stories about Jerry, what he meant to us, how he changed the car industry, how he changed how cars are designed. And as we move into this next phase, I'd really like to talk about his legacy. What does he leave behind besides some very inspired people? And I would think, I think, Anka, one of the things that I think of about you as a designer who then went on from Nissan is you sort of use these founding ideals to create a hotel. You have a hotel called the 12 Senses Resort. Right. 12 Senses Retreat.
No, I got to stop you right there. You guys just say this so casually. She was in the car design studio, and now she has a hotel.
A micro hotel. A very small one.
But the whole idea that somehow... You said it before. You seem to think that this guy inspired you to think anything was possible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think he really, and also, of course, definitely Brenda, who, introduced me to this whole, incredible world of colors and materials. But that whole studio just was so inspiring and so confirming, and I think what it really instilled in me, and probably in a lot of people or everybody who's worked there, is just have no fear for anything.
Yeah. Just go for
because if you're driven
and
by
no
fear,
limitations on what you can do.
And no limitation, it's almost like, anything is possible and everything is open to your imagination. Whatever you can imagine, you can, in a way, manifest, and it's possible. So
did it help that he let you do other projects, as we said in part 1, other than cars? You designed children's furniture, and you did some work for Callaway and all that. So it opened your eyes to other design, because that's what I would think would happen in all these corporate structures. You design, I do doors. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm known for, and I build doors year after year, and I'm the king of doors or something here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, this is one reason why I came from Germany I came to California from Germany, and I know exactly why now, because also the entire attitude in California is like that. You know what? You can do this today, but you can do another thing tomorrow. This whole entrepreneurial mindset. And I feel like Jerry really embodied all that in the way the studio was run, even though it was part of a corporation, but it was really more run like a very creative, entrepreneurial type
playground.
Studio. And he was someone, absolutely. The
and I can tell you,
is the perfect description.
I suspect that's why they did eventually all follow him and move all the car design studios here, not just because it's a bright, fun, can-do kind of culture, but it is that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, which I grew up in Detroit did not exist. Yeah. You worked for the big three, and it was about safety and security and not taking too many risks and loyalty.
Well, I think also
and the not possible attitude. Many times,
I think one of the things Jerry taught me was that, and I really took this to heart, was that it only works when both parties between the corporation and the talent realize that they're both lucky to have each other. Where in Becky's, it was more like, you are lucky to have this job.
Yeah.
Jerry always felt we are lucky to have your talent, and you are lucky to have this platform to explore in. And it was it taught me it taught me a humbleness to respect my own talent, but to just let it be what it was, which is really just love, and to be grateful for this playground. And Brenda, when you think about the legacy of Jerry, there's the inspiration side, now there's the vehicle side. At the end of the day, there are cars on the road that Jerry did, everything from the GTO to the original, the facelifted 300ZX, the Pathfinder, the hardbody pickup truck, Infiniti J30. I mean, there's just so many vehicles. We could spend an entire show.
You had me at GTO. I mean, that was such a cool car for its time. Or they took
with John DeLorean.
They took this kind of frumpy stock vehicle and turned it into one of the coolest cars that you had to have here.
Well, and Brenda, maybe you can speak to this. I think one of the biggest legacies for me is Jerry's ability to see, recognize, and foster talent. You think about Tom Semple, Doug Wilson. These people created cars that were beautiful. Go ahead, Brenda.
Well, no, but I'm going to stop you. Those are the car designers. But Jerry made everyone feel, and I'm going to say everyone feel, that they were the most talented person.
Yes,
exactly.
So well put.
I agree.
Although you sort of in your heart you go, it's kind of can I say BS? That's right. That's okay, right? Yeah.
You can say whatever.
And there's this sort of like, there's part of you that said, you know what? There's this back part that said, well, maybe he's onto something, and maybe I can be. Maybe I can push harder. Maybe, you know? And so he pushed you because he believed in you. And,
right.
And he also didn't believe in just the designers. I mean, he was inclusive and mindful way before it was trendy.
Before it was trendy.
Totally.
He hired by character of a person. I mean, yes,
incredible, yeah.
talent, but he hired by character, and everyone, including the janitor, had a voice on the design.
Oh yeah, everybody was always involved in the.
So inclusive.
Remember that? I remember like the guy that ran Bren he was always in our design reviews.
You're right.
Because he didn't see the world the way we did. He saw the world as a consumer, and so that's a valid opinion.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So talk about when he started this. I can't imagine that it wasn't just a bunch of guys. Probably, all look like me. A bunch of the car executives were all just a bunch of white guys. So I'm assuming there was just a bunch of guys in most of these other design.
Well, who did he start it with, Brenda? I mean, it was Tom Semple, Doug Wilson, Al Flowers, Alfonso Albiza. Alfonso's now the head of all Nissan Design.
He came when I came.
He came when you came. Yeah.
So you say he
Anderson.
fostered diversity and inclusion. Talk about that. Well, what did the team look like that he had and compare it to the other teams?
He started in a house, right? Before there was a studio, there was a house. Yeah.
Wow.
I was in a small house before. I mean, he hired Diane Allen. I think that was a beginning of diversity. To have a female exterior designer early on was.
Yeah, and Diane was like in school. She was like dyeing fabrics and putting them in cars and doing all these things that nobody did at the time. And she had this cool way of like capturing, stance and proportion. I mean, Diane is all talent, and he saw that in her, and he wasn't like, no, you're going to do this part of the car. He brought her in, and think of all the vehicles.
So let me ask you a question: was this for all of you your first car design job, or had you worked at other places and been brought over?
No, I started at Citroën in France. What about you guys?
I started, I was at DesignWorks BMW, but for a short time, and honestly, I mean, I sold myself as a color designer, but I really wasn't.
Is that right? Yeah.
I know, I wasn't one either. I started there. I wasn't really not a color designer either. I was a product designer.
Yeah.
So what was it that he saw in you guys then and in other talent that would allow you to take on these roles? You didn't have a 10-year color designer credential before you're here.
Well,
yeah.
I think he's. I remember coming to my interview, and I remember that he gathered around a table and I had like a tie on, and I was this little student, and Alfonso sat in my lap.
He took my
tie off, and they messed up my portfolio, and they pushed it all over the place, and
my God.
and they liked it. It wasn't bound. My portfolio was never bound because I always thought people should just be able to look at the
Mine
work that they
wasn't
liked.
bound either.
I always think that was one of the keys.
Interesting.
I didn't have a book.
There's a takeaway. I thought they're always a book.
No, because I thought people will gravitate to what they like, not what I like. Do you remember, Brenda?
I'm gonna date myself. Mine was on slides.
Oh,
yes.
There you go.
Wait, mine was on slides and on handouts. And mine was on both. I was sort of in the middle of you guys.
Oh my God, there was no Photoshop. This is right. We were analog.
Yeah. Oh my God. I had the letters like literally printed somehow in white with a copier paper, and then I had to roll this stuff over.
So he wanted to mess you up and get you outside your comfort zone. He wanted to get you out of the studio. Yeah. He wanted to get people other than the normal people that were coming in, the usual crowd that was showing up to be working these places, and he was letting you all something. That speaks volumes to. Yeah. Was that common in those days? Is this unusual?
I don't think so, no. But I think that also really described the energy and the vibe. But it was, I feel like everything was really built. I see it almost like a parent. Maybe I even parent a little bit like I felt with Jerry. How he was treating me as a designer. Son. Because I feel he just gave us so much trust and so much belief and so much love that, I mean, he knew it's fine. And I think what I really loved too, sometimes when we were like most stressed, I almost do this like every single week to myself. No, when I'm like, oh my God, I really have no time. But I always remember that then Jerry would say, everybody stops all the work, we're going to see a movie. And literally dragged out everybody from the entire studio, and it was like the worst time you would think ever.
That's right, the
it's
story.
So healthy, and so many times, I almost literally think about him every week, and I'm like, you know what? He always did that too. I'm going to go, I'm going to do yoga, or I'm going to do this and this and this, even though I'm like, my schedule really should not allow this. Yeah. But it was so healthy and amazing.
Wasn't it during Ultima, Brenda, that he took everybody to see Silence of the Lambs?
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs. There's a movie you want your crowd to see.
Right? And it was like, it wasn't like we didn't have anything to do.
Yeah. It always happened like almost in a sense at the worst time, but that was actually the best time to just go away and step away from the canvas.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's go into what did he leave behind? Is this just an era that this was the 60s, it was a fun 80s. Era, the 80s, but I'm saying like we think of the 60s as this freewheeling hippie environment. Is the legacy live on? Was that just a moment in time? And if whatever has happened, what did he do that continues to this day? You say that's because of he and guys like him.
Go ahead, Brent. I think that because you're.
I'm going to talk about the physical environment that he left behind. This beautiful building that he and this architect Ken Ronchetti envisioned, 35 years ago. It's absolutely this timeless, beautiful space to be in. And even though there's been numerous renovations, more than I can even count, it still has this open and honest presence that stays there. And then one thing he was so sort of clever and smart that he knew that he didn't the conference table in the glass office, which is the main conference room. He didn't want it to have to where the lead people are on the ends of each table,
that's right,
room, the head people. So he made it out of concrete built into the foundation of the building,
and it had no head,
and it's a points on the end,
yep,
and solid to where you can't sit on the end, meaning you can't be the leader of this meeting. Everybody is equal.
Amazing,
and you can't get rid of that table. It's part of the building. That lives on forever.
There's a legacy. Yeah,
that's amazing,
that is really the essence of his leadership style. You everybody was involved, and you can't take over this meeting and be the leader by the architecture and the building. Yeah, Brent, I really love that because that you can call out every car you ever worked on and led, but that's really where it is. It's in the essence of who he was.
So has it continued as we go into the 21st century? Transportation is not a car and a truck anymore. It's a hover pad. It's a pod that's going to pick me up. It's a robot. It's it's a flying something that we haven't seen yet. It's an automated thing. Is this sort of in this Wild West, do we need this sort of imaginative, creative thing, or is it not fit in the new reality?
That's a great question because I think that, me, Anka and I, when we left, we've worked together for a decade, almost exclusively on every project since we left. And I think of Jerry every single project, and a lot of the stuff we do is post steering wheel, meaning these are service vehicles, taxis that come and pick you up, and you face each other in the vehicle. And every time we are given the task to design a vehicle like that, I think of the way Jerry taught us to design, and it's like, who is this for? What are we going to do with this thing? Because if you make all sorts of assumption about what a car is, you'll never get there. Just the idea that a car, typically you face this, you face in a linear direction versus a social space. And now that a car has become a social space, God, I think of all those projects, Brenda, where we had to go out and study social spaces. Remember studying for Centra, going into nightclubs, going into restaurant booths and sitting there and observing the space. And so that kind of stuff really... It guides, I think, the work certainly that we do. And Brenda, now that you've left Nissan, you're a consultant. I can only imagine what it's like for you because you're probably seeing it all.
And what kind of thing? So what do you do now? Just are you in that box? Are you a color designer? Or is that your niche?
I can actually say I'm a color designer.
Yeah.
I think I finally can graduate to say I am a color designer. Yeah, I'm freelancing and I'm enjoying. I think the one thing that sticks with me every day is I can choose the types of people I want to work with and the types of characters, just like Jerry did.
Just like Jerry did.
And that is something that I will cherish. It isn't just a job to me, it's a relationship.
Oof. Yeah. Oh, that's powerful, Brenda. I was at a party last night for the auto show. LA Auto Show's in town right now. If you haven't gone, it's really great, listeners. And I was talking to a designer who works at a car company, and she asked me, she said, how do you sleep at night not having a job to go to every day? And I said to her, "How do you stay awake going to a job every day?" And I thought about like that was Jerry, right? He had this idea that if you believe in the talent and you put it out there, the work will come, and it does. I'm not saying we don't ever the analogy I've used in other shows is sometimes like you're like flying a plane that sometimes run out of gas. You get all close to the horizon, but. You just have faith.
But you never, but you never crash.
Just believe in yourself.
Right. Go ahead,
like he did,
Jerry could ad-lib unlike anyone I've ever seen. He was a master. He could command an audience without any preparation. It's just because he believed in what he was saying.
Yeah.
And it came out and so honest and pure. And sometimes really kind of wild and crazy, but he believed it, and there was so much conviction, and people ate it up. He could sit there with a 3x5 card. I mean, that to me is just and ramble for 2 hours and have people on their feet at the end of the 2 hours.
And I think about because behind that gift of the gab was the essence of talent. Like I remember, I think of like early coming in to Nissan after getting the job, coming in and being assigned to work. I remember things that like real world things that I live by. I remember him telling me, if you get the proportions and the stance right, all the details will find their way out of the vehicle. And I love the way he said it. The details will find their way out of the vehicle. Meaning you don't have to have anxiety about, is it going to work? Is this detail going to work? Anytime that the design comes from the vehicle,
it's almost like trust the process.
Trust the process and trust the vehicle. It designs itself.
Amazing, yeah.
Jewelry. Remember?
Very true.
He didn't like the term like adding jewelry. He thought that kind of diminished the
cheap,
decorative,
damaged goods. He would have called it.
It's not so authentic. Yeah,
that's true.
No fake bling we needed here. To draw your attention. No shiny objects to draw your attention.
And that goes back to colors too. Like the way color material design was not an afterthought. I mean, we were integrated in the process and even way before, and that was amazing. Actually, for me, starting out as color, I studied product design.
Yeah,
that was quite amazing because I since grew up with that mindset. And many other companies may just apply color materials an afterthought. But
how does it leads to how the question of how has design changed? What would Jerry not recognize today here?
Ooh. Such an artist, huh?
Because it's not just what you're designing, it's how you're designing. You're doing it in virtual reality and other things, I'm assuming.
I think Jerry would be very proud, to be honest. I mean, it makes me a little emotional, but I think if Jerry, I think that the things he didn't recognize would have been the things that he loved most. Because I think he would have been very proud of that. Like I think he would be proud of the work we're doing. I don't know. It's hard to say. But the thing was, Jerry was such an artist. I don't know. How do you feel, Brenda? What would be unusual?
Yeah, I'm thinking he eventually would embrace it, but I think he would fight back to keep sort of the roots of how things were done too.
Yeah. To protect.
I think keeping the humanness in it too, like keeping the sense of touch and like having actual models and things like that, because he was so about people and so about I feel like it was so much about making things, and I'm sure he would have embraced a lot of the virtualness, but
the real
I think he would have been smart enough to understand to really transfer your love or your connection to the design. You have to be,
because how do you touch? You don't touch something in virtual reality. You feel like you are, but you're not touching it.
That's such a great point, Paul. Thank you for bringing it up. I think that hits it on the head. So, I think if Jerry were here, one of the things that I loved there's a great story with Jerry Hirshberg and Tom Semple, who was one of the leaders that followed Jerry after Jerry retired. And Tom was another one of these designers that just was so talented. But if Tom liked a surface and it was a good looking surface, he would pull down his pants and he would touch it with his butt.
What?
And the butt is the most sensitive thing in the car. And you can't touch a virtual surface with your butt. And so you can't feel it. And I think to translate that into what that would mean, I think, is that at the end of the day, the vehicle lives in the real world. So you have to design it in the real world. It has to have a human touch to it.
Yes.
Whether it's your butt or your hands.
I'm going to go out to my car and rub my butt on it today.
It's the biggest compliment you Brenda. And that wasn't the only time I saw pants come off in that studio. I remember so many.
Oh my God. Well, it's hard to top that one. I want to say butt, but I can't think of anything else beyond that one here.
So it probably makes me the butt of a lot of jokes tomorrow,
exactly.
But you know what? I don't care. It's true.
Well, I think the fact that you're here and remembering and laughing says a lot about who the man was and how he affected you. And I'm getting choked up, and I didn't even know the guy here because it sounds like he was somebody special.
He really
Absolutely,
was.
yeah.
I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
I mean, grateful for the friendships that we made with you guys. For sure. Well, those are lifelong.
And I think too, like in the way he, in a sense, formed or inspired us. I can see like a lot of the startup companies, they're actually implementing that like all the way to Google's, but I feel he's already done that like 20 or 30 years ago. There was always like, food for everybody. There was so much play. I mean, I really feel like he did something way earlier than a lot of the studios. And all of Silicon Valley is actually embracing that.
I'll tell you
like,
another thing.
Every place has free food, and they want you to play, and they want you to go out. So, but he was a visionary. He had that already.
Yeah. I'll tell you what else Silicon Valley embraces, which was not true of most of corporate America, maybe still isn't true, is that they wanted to develop and hold talent within. The idea wasn't to get you to grow and go. Mm-hmm. Right. We're going to give you a shot, and we're going to build you up, and then we hope you're going to stay there for 30 years. So we got the team. Whereas Silicon Valley embraces the idea that you're going to leave after a period of time, and they're proud of the fact you're going to create 5, 10, 1,000 more startups. They see that as a success rather than, oh, my God, we lost all these people. So it seems like he empowered you guys not just to do good work, but to eventually, and not everybody, it's not for everybody, but those who want can fly out of the nest and go do something else here.
Yeah, I think he would. Like I said, I think he would be proud of the stuff when he sees it. Because the thing is that now Jerry can see everything, right? He can see all the secret stuff that he couldn't see. He sees everybody and everything now, right? So he's and he sees all. And I think that he would be. I kind of imagine him up there, kind of playing some prank on us, right?
Yeah. As his son. At his memorial last week, his son, Eric, said one of the most poignant things. He said, at the end, he says, I think Dad's up in heaven shooting rubber bands at God.
Yes.
Well, I think that's where we're going to leave it there. That's a fitting way to picture the man here. You're all shooting some spitballs back at him today here, that's for sure.
Brenda, thank you so much for calling. I'm just really grateful you took the time.
My pleasure.
Well, for anybody who knew him, it sounds like it was a pleasure. And for those of you who didn't, it sounds like something we missed a colorful character here. But whatever it is, it seems like he made his impact and imprint in the industry and in ways he probably never could have envisioned. Yeah. His legacy lives on through what you guys are doing and through the work that continues.
Yep, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week.
Thank you.
You've been listening to another episode of Driven by Design right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net.